Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth. And for this segment, we have our special guest that joins us quite frequently, our Director of 5-Star Basketball Operations, Coach Brae Beatles.
Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming on.
Always excited to be here.
We just had a couple great segments with Ray Kindle, who is an archery expert. I mean, the guy can flat out shoot. I watched him hit a balloon from 100 some yards away. It was insane. So he's launching a brand new, we're calling it accelerated archery, advanced archery. And it's like an 8-week program for kids who come out and they like to shoot and they want to really learn how to do it at a higher level. And so we're going to do 2 of these courses, one this spring, one this summer. And that's going to be kind of like our feeder program, almost like for basketball, Youth Development League.
Yep.
That's going to prepare them for 5-Star Life archery team.
Wow.
That will start in the fall.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be fun. So we're going to have travel archery.
How does that work?
So literally they will train under one of the country's best archery trainers, Ray Kindle, and they will prepare, train, and then they'll start competing.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So they'll compete locally, and then they'll very likely, if they qualify, they'll qualify for a state event and possibly go to a national event. And some of these kids eventually, just like they do with the gauntlet, they'll get college scholarships.
Wow. So is this team-based or team and individual?
Individual and team, yeah.
So it's kind of like wrestling?
That's a good question for Ray. I think wrestling with a bow and an arrow, that would be even more interesting.
That would.
I don't think that sport exists.
Making our own stuff up here.
If you just tuned in, go to 5starlife.org to learn more about the mission of 5-Star Life. We're on this laser-focused mission to change the face of culture, of education, of sports, and we do that by focusing on the number one thing you have to target according to research, and that's our operating system, our mindset, and it's working and it's having success. You can learn more at 5starlife.org. You can also listen to the show anywhere podcasts are played. You can also watch us on YouTube at the 5-Star Life Show. Please like this, subscribe to it, and share this. So we just recorded early today a new lesson for kids. Tens of thousands of kids will go through this lesson, and we're talking about really teaching kids how to break through in leadership. And leadership, our definition of leadership is so simple. There's so many definitions of what leadership is, but we define leadership as influence. Influence is leadership. Leadership is influence. And every single person is a leader because everybody has influence. And the number one person that we can influence or should influence is ourselves. So we're starting this series just talking about how do you lead and influence yourselves. In today's lesson, we talked about, like, if I'm the number one influence or leader of my life, it's really important that I start to pay attention to who and what influences me. And, every one and everything has an agenda. There's nothing that's neutral. There's not a person that you meet. There's not a book you read. There's not a podcast you listen to. There's not a song, a news station, or a movie that is neutral. Everything has an agenda. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Everything has an agenda. And so in this lesson, we talk about these 4 different areas of influence that we have to start to think about taking responsibility to be the gatekeeper of saying, I'm not letting this influence me. I'm not letting this in. I'm going to start filtering what I allow to influence me. And the first category is just people. Brae, have you ever had to filter out people from decision-making, from choices, from life as a kid, as an adult?
Yeah, no question. No question. I mean, that's part of Kirby Smart had the head football coach at Georgia had an amazing quote in a press conference once about the cost of leadership. That's kind of, I think these 4 things you're going to mention probably are the cost of leadership, right? Like what you have to pay to be a leader. You have to do sacrifice in this area, give this up, filter yourself from these people, whatever, these habits, whatever that is. I thought that was super interesting, and it's something that I really was inspired when I heard it. But absolutely, I have to filter out people, and from, you can't make every decision with the same circle of people necessarily, right? You have to reach out to people with expertise and people that you trust.
I always told kids this for years. I heard this, I thought it was brilliant, so I stole it. But I always tell kids, like, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And Jim Rohn, the author, lecturer, and leadership guru says, like, you and I are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And so you think about the people we interact with, whether it's family or friends or peers or coworkers or whatever, the people that we are consistently around influence us. So it's why we see, kids who, little kids, they don't cuss, but when they start surrounding themselves with their kids, they start cussing, just like that. Why? That's influence. Mm-hmm. And so for us to be vigilant about being the gatekeepers of, because often we don't pay attention to the influence of people around us. Like, if you hang out with people that are doing certain things, like working out, there's a better chance you'll work out. If you hang out with people that, like football, you'll probably start liking football just by default.
You're a product of your environment.
Yes. And so it becomes this issue of looking at who are those influencers, and are they, I'm not saying they're good or bad, but are they helping me? Are they influencing me in a positive way or in a negative way? And we all have people that come into our lives for seasons, and they might have more influence during one phase of our life than another phase of our life. And I have had to look at that, and not everybody's going to be a part of your journey forever at the same level. And that's okay.
Sure.
Especially if you're growing.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think there's value in obviously surrounding yourself with people that are winners. And then you have to kind of see what losing looks like a little bit, right? To be, that's a reminder of why I don't do those things. Right. I think that's crucial as well. And, the biggest thing is everyone says they want to win. And by win, I mean like just be successful in life and everything, right? Like everyone says that, but not everyone necessarily does what it takes to do that. And they either haven't had the support system to guide them towards that, or they don't maybe have the internal drive to say, you know what, I'm going to go find a bunch of winners and start doing what they do,
Well, and sometimes, what happens is people in our lives, as we are on this growth track and we're going somewhere, people can all of a sudden, the people that their agenda maybe was really good, it seemed to be like they were loving, they were supporting, but we get to a certain point where all of a sudden they don't like the growth in our life. They don't like where we're going. So then what they do is they say, oh, no, I want to get back to the way it was. And if we're not careful, we will let someone else hold us back and influence us from where we're going. This can happen in a good way or a bad way. And so this idea of like being the gatekeeper, Coach Seth, you saying like, that's not very empathetic. That's not very compassionate. That's not being a nice person. That's not 5-star. And I would say you have to have balance, because the reality is there are people that have their own agenda. And they were very supportive until it got to a certain point where maybe what you're doing is no longer serving their purposes, that now it starts to be revealed. And so it's people who are compassionate and empathetic that don't balance it with wisdom and taking responsibility, vigilant. It's those people that get taken advantage of by people who maybe even unknowingly are trying to manipulate them to keep them where they were. And those are hard things to discern.
Yes, and it's hard to know when you're in it.
Absolutely. And that's where, for me, I often bring mentors and people in and just say, hey, what do you think about this? Right? And it goes into, like, I channel my inner Tony Stark. And it's like, I love the visual of him in Iron Man, like looking at that, all the digital stuff is in front of him and he's spinning it and he's looking at it from every angle. That's critical thinking. Looking at it from, okay, I'm going to try to put myself in their shoes and look at their perspective. Then I'm going to go look at an outsider's perspective that's nothing to do with this. I'm going to look at my own perspective. I'm going to get maybe a mentor to give me a perspective. And it's amazing how that's practicing vigilance to use critical thinking. If we do that, things come into view and they become clear. And that's where I've had to just say, you know what? I love this person, but I have to create some separation, some boundaries, or they're going to hijack my destiny. So simple stuff. We're out of time for this segment. Go to 5 Star Life at the break. We'll be right back with more after this.